All right, everybody. It looks like we are live. I want to make sure that I'm live, so I'm going to refresh a couple of things while we're getting this done. I want to welcome you all here today, whatever day it may be right now. I am going to be joined here momentarily by Charlie Rankin from FloridaFundraiser.com, a Florida fundraiser, obviously. Today we want to just clear the air and talk about fundraising process for you guys. We know going into this part of the season, we're already thinking about fundraisers. We're thinking about the show. We're thinking about the expenses that are coming up. And I see a lot of comments going on in a lot of the groups asking, hey, what's the best fundraiser? And I don't think that that's the right question. I think the question that we need to be asking is, what's the right process for our fundraising? So I see Charlie's about ready, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him on with us. Hey there, Charlie.
Hold on. Hey guys. Mike, I'm having a little trouble with my audio.
Well, I hear you just fine.
Get adjusted here. Yeah, I hear you now. All right, we're square.
All right, excellent. So
guys, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much for having me on this morning.
Of course. So I have you on, I see you live on Facebook now. I see you live on YouTube. So we're good. So why don't you introduce yourself, and while you do that, I'm going to get this this live shared into many other groups while you do that.
That sounds great. Well, good morning, good afternoon, folks. My name's Charlie. I'm in St. Former director. My wife and I, Courtney, we live in St. Augustine, raising our 3 kiddos, and former band director at the middle school level in St. Johns County, Florida. I taught at a middle school called Passetti Bay Middle School. My last year teaching band was in 2014 and 2015, and wrapped up that school year with around 330 kids in the band program. The things that we did, the things that a lot of our colleagues are doing and working on right now. When I resigned in January of that school year due to the stress of the things that we're talking about on this call. As a band director and a young dad at that time, what I found was the reason I resigned wasn't that I stopped caring about band. The reason that I resigned is because I was carrying so much on my own as a young band director and as a young husband and now a young dad at that time. And the things I was carrying didn't always have to do with what I was doing related to concert performance. It was a lot of the everything else that comes with being a middle school or a high school educator, but then that's compounded when that person is also a music educator or involved in the arts, because it is like running a small business, which is in addition to your teaching responsibilities. And so some of the things that I struggled with, I now help with professionally. I happen to be in a situation where I coach educators on the things that fall into like the everything else bucket. And I actually help them with those projects. So I've put together an opportunity where I help about 200 either booster groups or band directors with the everything else that comes with being involved in the arts. So that could be fundraising, apparel, promotional items, shoes, igloo coolers, just the things that had that administrative burden.
Right. And I know a lot of these parents right now, they're out there looking for the next best thing and the next best fundraiser that's going to solve all of their problems. But
sure,
what I mentioned this to you before we went live, but could you tell us, in your opinion, what the parent or booster leader that's listening at home right now, either, they're either with us live or they're going to listen to us downstream later, but what's something that these parents are listening to? What's something that they need to understand before they launch any kind of fundraising campaign?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the things a young director or a booster is going to say first to me is, Charlie, what do you have? What what products do you have, and what works well, what would work well. And what I generally believe they're asking me, is there a product or is there a platform that I've seen like just be kind of like a unicorn, where if we just plug this one product into the fundraising calendar, or if we actually just use this platform, that all of a sudden it's going to be like manna just raining down from heaven because we chose that platform. And I usually will delicately ask them a few more questions, but I will ask them, what are we raising money for? I'll actually say, Mike, if you were the band director or the booster, Mr. DeJohn, if I could ask you, if I could give you a gift card or send you a gift card that had the amount of money that your program needed for 13 months, revenue-wise, and there's bippity boppity boo, here's the gift card. How much money does your program need to survive for 13 months? And I'll just stop with that question. And then I just daydream for a second with them about what is the biggest number that we need for this program. And then we would diagnose what they already have set up for fundraising, maybe concession stands. And then we go through until we get to the actual fundraising need. And so maybe it's $7,000, maybe it's $70,000, but through a series of just chatting, we need to find out what the actual fundraising need is, instead of maybe just taking how many kids are in the band and multiplying it times some, like a fair share amount. That's probably the most common thing is that I see is that we didn't really ever investigate to the penny what the fundraising goal was. We just started a scavenger hunt for the right product. And so I would say, let's pump the brakes on the product and the platform and really find out where the pain point is on how much money we need. That's going to be a conversation with the directors to find out what's different for spending this year than what we spent last year. Are we spending the same? Do we need to increase our new instrument budget line? Do we need to increase our staffing budget line? So I would say, in summary, how much do we need to raise to solve the problems for this coming year? And I think that that's the step that gets skipped. And the director or the boosters often go straight to, what do you have? And what product worked across town that I can just plug in.
So this is more of a process question. When a parent joins a booster organization, which is happening in spades right now, we got programs just getting started. We've got new parents joining, old parents coming back, and inevitably it's going to come up. I mean, it came up in the very first booster meeting I went to for my kids' high school marching band. What are we going to fundraise this year? So when a parent hears we need to fundraise, what should happen before anyone chooses a fundraiser? And I believe you already touched on that with, the amount, but what other things need to come into play here before we even decide what we're going to do to raise those funds?
Yeah. The Simon Sinek, who's an author, the what would be the third decision. I think they need to go to the middle of the decision, which is why. I often call that the need. That could also be called the purpose. And so they need to really dig into the why. Now, I know I kind of repeating that, but if it's a fall fundraiser like this time of year, they need to understand from this particular fundraiser, the one that we're going to start August 1st, that's going to run till Labor Day, what is the solution that's being solved with this fundraiser? And if they can communicate that this is going toward the new sousaphone, or this is going toward the new wrap for the trailer, or a new set of tires for the trailer, like just really diving into the why. It might be that first July or August fundraiser has 7 or 8 whys that are being accomplished. And that's fine. Have a list of them. But I would start with the middle of the decision being why. The second layer of the decision being how. And then that the one that we often start with is, what are we going to do? And so I would start again, really asking why a few times. And the more you ask why do we need a new tuba? You're going to get to an answer that's going to be because, well, children, we don't have enough for every child to hold an instrument. So they're having to share tubas. And then you might ask again, well, why is sharing tubas a problem? Well, because we have 4 children and they're not getting a good musical experience, or they can't take it home. And you keep on asking why, and what we'll find, it should get back to the philosophy of the program that we want children's lives to be positively impacted through the experience of music, that it really is never about the popcorn and it's really never about the dollar. It's about the granular level that we want to make sure children's lives are changed. And that's really the product that we're selling, is the impact of change that music education will have. So I would say, again, pump the brakes on the product or the platform or even the date on the calendar, and stack up your whys. And then we can build the fundraisers after we have a clear vision of the purpose, the need. Start there. Start with the need. Start with the purpose.
So here's something that I see a lot on many fronts, not just fundraising, but on many fronts in general. It's that when any initiative is started or any need is identified and the inevitable ask comes out, hey, we need help. We need to fundraise. We need to get together. We need to do some work. The roadblock is that nobody participates. And I see that over and over, post after post in the parent group, that why aren't the parents stepping in? Why isn't anyone helping? Why is it the same 3 people doing all the work all the time? Now, there is some mythology to that. It just feels like it's just the 3 or 4 people. It's usually not. But I understand the feeling like you're all alone, that you're on an island doing this. And a lot of parents feel that way when it comes to fundraising. Sally is out there, knocking on doors, making sales for the fundraiser, and Timmy is inside playing his PS5, and he's not out there knocking on doors. Yet, according to 501c3 nonprofit compliance rules, everyone has to benefit the same. So Sally's parents are mad because Timmy's not doing anything and he's getting the same benefit that Sally gets, and that's not fair to the parents. So do you encounter that, and what do you do to help ease that burden and get more participation? That's the question. How do we get more participation from the parents, from the kids, and from the director?
Okay. Well, this is the next step to moving the needle on fundraising, right? Because now maybe we've gotten the why all settled and we're clear that it's a new tuba that we need. So now we have to increase that participation percentage, right? This is the percentage that probably is the secret percentage of fundraising success, more than the profit percentage is the participation percentage. I think we have to address kind of the culture and the attitude towards fundraising from probably 3 parties that are involved in the fundraising. We probably need to start with addressing, it's a little bit tricky, but where is the band director going to fall on his or her framework in his or her mind about fundraising and the revenue? So there has to be a little dose of CFO in the band director. The CFO can be delegated to a booster volunteer, but I believe that in my heart, the fundraisers that have the wild success, where they're breaking $60,000, $70,000, nearing $100,000 in campaign or the ones that are getting 90% participation, 95% participation, maybe that's a better way to talk about it, is the one where the director is really still a bit of the CFO of the band program. And what I mean by that is that the director has an interest in the revenue of the program and not just delegating that entirely to someone else. Now, what I mean by that is that the participation will increase with the students when the director says, we do this as a program. And I think that we need more of we fundraise as a program conversation happening throughout the year. But then we also need to see more of celebrating what we did when we fundraised. So maybe celebrating when UPS brings by the marimba, and maybe there's some, there's a bit of an overture and a fanfare that we fundraised as an organization for this marimba. So from the top of the organization, I believe we can see more participation if over time we reframe the culture that we fundraise for the program. Now, if that has not been the culture, I don't think that you can just necessarily just snap your fingers. I do think you need to reframe it little by little. The second party that needs to be discussed is the students, and probably then the parents kind of come with, because they kind of go together. But when I work with a program, I'm rarely talking or presenting to the parents. When I present with a teacher, I'm presenting to the students just in the situation that I'm in. And I actually talk about we fundraising versus me fundraising. And it's pretty common, at least in Northeast Florida, there's a lot of me fundraising where I know that I'm supposed to raise $750 because that's what was on the piece of paper that was handed out. And so I'm just gonna worry about $750, help me fundraise for my fundraising goal. And it really doesn't fit the model that we teach from the podium. And so I talk about with band programs that we have a we fundraising goal. And so that if it's $750 that was on the piece of paper and there's 100 kids in the band, what we're actually fundraising for is $75,000. And we are raising $75,000. And then I'll say the only me that we're going to bring up in the band room is ME, and that's going to stand for music education.
Nice.
And so that's kind of the second party. Then the third party will be those parents, and we as a organization are fundraising for $75,000. What I would do, that's how I would handle that. The donors are going to support the program and the child. I don't think this impacts the donors. Now, there is a reason to track individual fundraising, and Mike, you can help me on this if I'm going down the wrong way. But when it comes to just maybe an incentive for participating in that fundraiser, maybe what I mean by an incentive, I actually have one here. Like this is something I use right now. This is a Nido, which is a squishy, and so I might have these available at a fundraiser. If a student has communicated with 20 people, then they're going to get a Nido for participating in the group activity of asking. They're not going to get, in this situation, if we're doing the we fundraising concept, they're not getting a free trip because of the fundraising. They're getting a gift or a slice of pizza for participating in what I call an ask-a-thon. But you'd have to, maybe you're a little more in tune with some of the other regulations of, a squishy versus a field trip. But I believe if we focus on we goals, then that's going to help with the participation problem. But again, that motivation isn't coming from a booster in the groups that I'm seeing. That motivation is coming from the director. So the topic here is reframing the culture, reframing the attitude of director, students, and parents about that we are fundraising for a we goal.
I just want to point out to all the parents that are here listening, there's a word that Charlie keeps saying, and it's a word that I say often, and that's culture. There's a lot of cultural involvement here, and there's a culture of fundraising as well. And this we culture is very, very important, and it's something that we need to start really attaching to. This is something I have just recently talked about inside of the culture lab that we have out there. And it was talking about balance. You have, I'm going to connect it to a music ensemble because that's what we do here. Every part is important. And in the fundraising activity, every student is important. Every student's participation is important. Everybody's, it's all important, right? But everybody has a very specific part within this activity. So when we're looking at the individual student fundraising, and I'm not going to say individual fundraising account because that's where we get into trouble, but the individual level of participation is very important. I will say all day long, yes, track individual participation, but don't track it for the wrong reasons.
I'm not sure.
And it kind of goes along.
We'll see. There we go. We may have lost you for a moment, Mike.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know. I keep seeing you hang up on my end. I'm not sure what's happening there. But
sure.
What I was saying is, every part is important. Every student participating in the fundraiser is important. And this is where I see the director come in. Or, when we're standing in front of a music ensemble, we're talking about the conductor. The conductor is there to provide the balance. The conductor is there to motivate the students to participate. The director and the instructional staff are there to pull the whole team together so that the fundraiser is a success, just as they are there to pull the whole ensemble together so that we're producing the proper sound, that we're producing the proper blend, that we're producing the proper end product. I think those go hand in hand here. And that's where that culture of participation is very important. And even here in fundraising, whether you say you have a fundraising culture or not, you do. Culture is automatic. Culture is there. Culture is what you accept. The culture is what you tolerate. Are you going to tolerate, and I'm going to try to choose my words carefully here. Are you going to tolerate a student that's not participating? Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go knock on their door and yell at them for not participating, but are you tolerating them? Are you tolerating the lazy culture that they're bringing in, that they don't want to do it? But at the same time, are you protecting the whole story there? Are you seeing the whole story? Do you know what's happening in that student's home? Do you know what that student is up against?
Sure.
I know we all tend to think we all silo ourselves and think that, well, if my life is this way, then the person next door to me's life is that way. And that's not always true.
I want to jump in on something that you said, and it was a domino in my brain, and I wanted to share something. That's okay. We're in the space of culture and attitude right now. Mm-hmm. And occasionally I'll have a parent or a child, we don't fundraise, is what they'll say. Or there was this one scenario where a parent's like, we won't ask our family to pay for it. We're not going to send something to our families to pay towards this. And I was like, can you tell me more about that? Because I just want to understand what you just said. And she said, my family knows how much I make, and I can't send them a fundraiser because they know I make more money than they do. And I said, I don't understand what you're saying. She said, I can't send a fundraising link to my brother because he knows I make more money than he does. And so I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. And I said, I think I know what you're saying now. I said, I just wanted to share, like, whatever any of us make, your brother is your son's nephew, or your brother is your son's uncle. Mm-hmm. And or your parents are your son's grandparents. And what I try to communicate to that person on the call with me was that we aren't sending them a bill that mom and dad can't pay. That's not what fundraising really is. We're sending them an invitation to get involved in their grandson's activity that the grandson is interested in. Or we're sending an invitation for an uncle or an aunt to get involved in their niece or nephew's world. So it could be looked at that a relative that supports a fundraiser, it's a way of clapping for that child. Mm-hmm. It's a way of supporting that child when maybe that, like my brother can't come to band concerts because he lives 16 hours away, but he can support his nephew with a donation or a bag of popcorn or maybe even a ticket to a pancake breakfast that Uncle George is never going to come to because he lives 16 hours away. And the giver is the one that gets joy, right? The giver is the one that gets joy. So that's maybe part of the reframing. And I don't recommend to a band director that you just beat this topic up to death with a family. I don't recommend that. If a family says that we don't fundraise, I would just respect that. And there's going to be other ways that family can support the band program. But I would start to reframe that this isn't a bill that can't be paid. This is an opportunity to invite our community, adults that like us, or adults that are supposed to like us, to be a part of what we're building, the music education that's happening in this classroom, in this community. So a lot of that culture, and I think so it could be the framework of how fundraising is perceived, that it's begging.
Yes.
And it isn't.
It's not charity, it's participation in an activity. And I think a lot of, and it's like what you said, people, it's that we versus me type of situation that gets in the way. Because when we're out there fundraising, we're knocking on doors, we're bugging our neighbors to buy a bag of popcorn, we're almost presenting it as if help me in my endeavor in this program, not help us. So when the family says, well, we don't fundraise because we don't want to pester our family, that's because they have been pestered by other people that are doing this, in my opinion, wrong. Sure. And instead of going out there, sharing the story, sharing the why, not the bag of popcorn, not the I have $250 in fees to support here. No, my program needs the support of our community because we all can't do it. Yes, my parents make more money than you guys do. That's great. But somebody else's parents don't. And that's how we are all helping here, because we are coming together as a team to meet this financial obligation for everybody. And yes, I'm the one knocking on the door. And yes, my dad is an engineer at Garmin, or my dad's a doctor. And yes, he's a cardiovascular surgeon. And yes, I know you know how much my family makes. But there's 200 other kids and we can't support them all. Right. That's why we need a village to do it.
I'd be curious. I'm in my mid 40s. And so I was in school. I was in elementary school in the 80s. And I was in middle school and in high school in the 90s. And I wonder at times if parents my age, they're framing it as what we maybe have differently than what we did in the 80s and 90s. I don't know. I know that for our household, we're excited to help our three kiddos have a moment to engage with aunts and uncles, a moment to engage with like our wedding party. That's usually who we'll ask, like our bridesmaids and our groomsmen here in the Rankin house. And it lets the next generation of Rankins interact with folks that are adults that like these children because they're Rankins, and that's how we look at it. And whether our children were involved in dance or horseback or athletics or arts, anyway, if the children are involved in an activity that they enjoy, fundraising would be a pleasure, not like a burden, because we're pouring in. All right.
So I had someone ask.
We got to frame the culture. We got to frame that culture.
So I had someone ask a question, and it's more my lane than your lane, but maybe we can tackle it together.
Yeah.
So it's from a Jose Saldana. He is from Texas, small 4A band, 60 members. And I hope you're still here, Jose. Maybe we can answer this live. We'll find out. It says, we're a nonprofit 501c3. The outgoing officers told us that we were limited to 2 fundraisers for the fiscal year. Is that true? Our tax preparer didn't know much and advised us to talk to the comptroller's office. Now, that comment, I think you answered your own question. Yes, talk to the comptroller's office. Talk to the district. There could be a district restriction. I run into that a lot with a lot of people. And I also, like, for the school that I'm involved with here locally, they have a district-wide fundraising calendar so that organizations aren't competing with one another. And this is because I'm in a small town. Now, I have a 6A school. I have a very large school, state championship football team. We're very football heavy, but very active athletic boosters. But I still live in a small town. And I would imagine that a small 4A band in Texas is probably in a small town. So you kind of got a similar thing, which leads me to the topic of donor fatigue. You don't want to go beat up your community over and over selling trinkets that nobody asked for to raise money for something that you really don't know what you're supporting, and neither do they, because we haven't taught our kids that are making the sales the story. But what do you think about the programs that are limited to a number of fundraising programs in a given year?
I think it could be a blessing in disguise. They maybe don't know that, because if we know we have a cap on campaigns, it puts a lot of emphasis on this has to work. The other cliff, so this is one cliff. We only can do 2 campaigns, right? That's a cliff that you could fall off of. And the other cliff is we can do a campaign that starts every week. So there's 2 cliffs here, right? What I often say is, what if we could get the big baseball bat out, in like the big baseball bat, and we could just hit the ball so hard, we raise 13 months worth of money. That's always what if we could just knock this thing out of the park in one campaign? And they say, Charlie, you think we can do this in one campaign? If we do it right. And Mike, you had some ideas before we hopped on. There's so many ways to prepare for the fundraiser instead of just starting another fundraiser. So if I were Jose, I think in Texas, I would spend more time on the 2 weeks before the fundraiser, so that the moment we start that fundraiser, it's like cranking on all cylinders. And then we would evaluate how that fundraiser went very carefully afterwards. We would dissect everybody that raised $1 or more. We would dissect everybody that raised $500 or more in the program, and we would find out who sat on the sidelines. I would do all of that analysis before that second campaign. And I would ask questions like, what did work? What didn't work? What did you like? What didn't you like? What prizes did we use? What prizes didn't we use? And then I would prepare another time 2 weeks before that second campaign. Now, when I say prepare, by the way, I had this handy right here. John, I didn't show this to you ahead of time. This is one of my secret weapons in fundraising. This one's laminated, but it would be having the kids write down who they're going to ask.
Yes.
So when Courtney and I were getting ready to get married, we made an invitation list. We made a list, and we had tables laid out. Like, we knew who we were going to ask to the wedding, right? We premeditated who we were going to ask. And the people we asked were people that we knew they liked us, and they wanted to be there to support us, and we had to have, of course, when we got married, we had to have their street address and other things, right? But now in fundraising, we need to have the person's name, their email, and their phone number. And I don't care where you are in the US right now fundraising, this supporters list and these 3 pieces of information, if you did something like this, it will transform your fundraising, but this would need to happen 2 weeks before the fundraiser. And then what they can do, Mike, they could, if they laminated it, actually you wouldn't laminate it, but they could use a little a pencil or a colored pencil or a highlighter, and they could mark off as they've asked people, not as they've given, but as they've asked, because this is going to help solve the asking problem. So it's not a platform problem. It's not a product problem. It's an asking problem. And so now some children have a smaller family. So maybe some children are going to just only be able to bring in half as many names, right? But here's the data, Mike. Take your goal and divide it by 20, and that's how many email addresses you need. Take your goal and divide it by 20, and that's how many quality potential donors you need. 500 names would be 10,000 raised. 5,000 names will be 100,000 raised. How do I know that number? Because I've done the math on $7 to $8 million raised, and that's what it ends up being. That it's about $20 an email address.
So I'm going to, I don't want to call people out, but I'm going to call out my audience a little bit here, because I know who's here. I know these parents. I know the personality. Van moms.
Okay.
A lot of you guys, and I see it on profiles too, a lot of you guys are involved in direct sales. A lot of you guys are involved in network marketing of some sort.
Okay.
And every single one of you parents at the beginning of that journey were given some sort of document that was called the memory jogger.
The memory jogger.
They wanted you to write down all the people that you know. Family, friends, the dentist, the grocer, the guy at the gas station. They wanted you to write down all those names. Now, Charlie here is saying, write down a list of your family, the people that you're going to ask. And a lot of people are going to immediately tense up and say, I don't want to do that. But listen, if these other companies, if these organizations have been relying on this idea for decades, that's because it works. And the memory jogger, in a sense, serves as a reminder to you when you're asked to fundraise, and the immediate thought is, I don't know anybody. I don't know enough people. Start writing down the names. You might be surprised how many people you know. Even and I said in there, the person at the gas station, that person. You're in a relationship with that person, even though it's small and temporary. And as I refer to it as a single serving friend, you see them once and probably never again. Bottom line is they still know you. You still have a relationship with that person, and you can still talk to them. Same thing applies here inside of the fundraising space, that when you're trying to raise money for your program, then this is what you need to do. So right. Jose did respond back. He said the athletic boosters fundraise year round. And then he adds, sorry, let me clarify. The band program is limited to 2 fundraisers, 1 per semester. But as far as we know, the booster clubs aren't limited. So this is the program itself that's limited, but not necessarily the booster program.
Right.
So that's a little clarity there for that one.
Sure.
So
sure.
I mean, bottom line, Jose, if you can only do 2 and that's verified, that's more opportunity for you to make it more impactful for your community. I've talked many times about producing an anchor event for your community, for your group that you slowly train your community to become accustomed to every year at the same time. And people will prepare for that. They'll be prepared to support you in that moment. I look at the high school in my area that my child is going to be going into. Every year they do the same fundraiser at the same time. and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it is a tremendous 5-figure fundraiser that they do every year. And it's fun. The community expects it, and it's adults only. It's not just the kids going around selling popcorn. It's the kids going around, it's the boosters going around and inviting the adult community into an evening event that's for the adults to have fun. And
Sure,
you know what, guys, you're gonna make plenty of money doing that, because there's a lot of money out there. You just have to know where to go reach for it.
You know, I mean, maybe I don't hear about it, Mike, because in the role that I'm in, I come to the school and then I leave. You know, I'm not always at the next meeting, but I can see. I guess I've heard before, like, oh, well, are they cold calling? Are they? Are they? Is this? You know, I don't believe that's the scenario, because they're reaching out to my brother. You know, my son reaching out to Uncle George is because the list that the Rankins are going to provide are adults that Courtney and I have helped our son with. And if we really wanted to help Matthew, we would even text these folks ahead of time and say, hey, Matthew's going to reach out to you. You know, our son's going to reach out to you because they're going to Carnegie Hall or because the band is getting ready to start their season. And as a fundraising consultant, I think there's little things hidden in fundraising that could help a kiddo pick up some traits that maybe aren't taught in other areas, and learning how to communicate, or improving on communication, or improving on how to have a voice call with someone. The phrase that I teach in my fundraising is, do you think you can help? I teach my, when I'm asked to present to students on fundraising, that we're going to call or text or approach an adult at church and explain what the band is up to. And then it's simply, do you think you can help? To our friend Jose, there's people in the world that are doing a fundraiser per month as well that don't have caps on how many fundraisers they can do. And I find the participation percentage really drops. The donor fatigue really is strong. And you end up with 10 fundraisers that 4 children do each fundraiser. And so none of them are home runs. They might be like single at best, but not a double, triple, or a home run, because we're just too many fundraisers. And Mike, I think the piece that I want to protect for our educators, because there's plenty of educators on these groups that don't have booster support, is if I could save you the time of having to run a second fundraiser or a 7th fundraiser, that's time that you now could have back for other things that are important, either for the program or for your relationships outside of your work. So if we could get better on the fundraising that we've already done, maybe by increasing those fundraisers by 30%, 100%, maybe we could cancel a fundraiser because the other ones go so much better.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know where you might fall on incentives. I recommend using incentives in fundraising. But I'm curious where we're going next. But that's kind of, are there any other questions also from folks, Mike? Yep.
Let's hit the incentive piece, because I know people are going to ask at some point. That's a big driver, because as soon as you take away the individual fundraising accounts, they immediately shift into a position of, then why do it? Why does it matter? And they need to be incentivized in some way, but it needs to be done compliantly. And what you mentioned earlier, that the incentive is coming from the director, that's great. That is 100% compliant. If if you put it in tiers, that is also compliant. As long as the incentive isn't some form of offset for their financial responsibility within the program, then it's generally going to be okay. Pizza parties work great. Good old corporate pizza party. But that happened at my kids' program. She's in the color guard, and the color guard got a pizza lunch at band camp this year because the color guard raised the most money at last year's big fundraiser. So things like that are fine because it's not coming directly from the booster, or it's not coming directly from, it's not coming from the proceeds of the fundraiser. It's also another donor mechanism to celebrate the kids that have done the thing, that have done the work. And it's what the IRS is looking at is, what was the intent? How was the money attributed? Did it go to the student's fees, or did it go to just celebrating the student? And they do look at those things, and those things do matter. So go ahead, Charlie.
Well, I have some slides from my top account in Florida.
Let me pull them up for you.
This is a program that has a booster group. So this is not a director doing this solo. This is a group that has a, this is in Florida. They have a target of $65,000 a year on their fundraiser. And it is a group goal here. There is no credit given to individual accounts on this fundraiser. What happens, Mike, in this band program, there's a band fee that's level, and the band parents are told the band fee should actually be this high, but we're only going to ask you to contribute this much, and we're going to fundraise the difference. That's what this band program does. There's a level fee, and then everybody works together to fundraise so we can have this much money up here. And
I like that idea.
This is week one. It's a 4-week fundraiser. At the end of week one, they host a pampering session out at the practice field. And now the highest earner per section does get pampered. And if that's a conflict, if that's too much of showing off like one child, you could pamper a section if you needed to, I'm sure, right? Yeah. And so they made it look like there'd be like grapes and freeze pops and fans and whatnot. And you could only earn this for 7 days worth of fundraising. So this was the first 7 days, and this was the prize after that week. And then week 2 was a new prize. So this is going to the section with the highest average earn per member. So week 2, the section with the highest average earned per member got a catered lunch. Maybe Chick-fil-A or Chipotle or something like that. A special meal goes a long way with middle school and high school students. Mm-hmm. Mike, I've heard of a band program taking the leading section out to Fuga de Chao or like Texas de Brazil. And like the tubas won the thing. Could you imagine taking the tuba section to Fuga de Chao? I think that's probably a good choice, Now that was week 2. Week 3, they did highest earner from each section, and they got Elevate gift cards. This is a trampoline park. And so they got a little recognition. I loved this one. This is a no-cost incentive. First in line for the pregame meal. And this was the section with the highest average earned per member wins the first in line with hospitality on game night. They had some other prizes. They had a neck fan that could be earned. They had a t-shirt that could be earned. They had an Outback Bloomin' Onion and a bag of candy that could be earned. Bag of candy. This was during the Taylor Swift Eras tour. So they were doing a friendship bracelet. And this was for entering emails. And we also played rock, paper, scissors. I did a 1-hour ask-a-thon with this group. Or actually, I was there. In this group, I was there during the day, and I presented class by class. But they must have hosted like a time together, and they played rock, paper, scissors. And you got to play rock, paper, scissors if you had raised at least $100. And if you had raised at least $100, anybody that did got to play rock, paper, scissors. And they had a tournament until there were only 2 people left in the rock, paper, scissors. And then the winner got a $100 bill for participating in the ask-a-thon. Those are some common ones. Mike, you're the expert on like our resident expert on making sure things are on the up and up. How does that look? I mean, where am I going wrong there? Where am I okay there?
I don't see anything inherently wrong. It's just a matter of how it's presented, how it's received, and what it's looking like at the end of the day. The enforcement logic on compliance for individual benefit or inurement really leans more towards what we see the individual's financial responsibility to the program being. Taking them out to dinner, giving them a neck fan, giving them $100 bill because they won a tournament because they were all selected into a contest because they met a certain metric. I see that as okay, and can see that as defensible if it ever came down to it. The only thing I would be careful with that $100 award is, where did that money come from?
Okay.
They would ask that question. Where did that $100 come from? Did it come from the funds that were raised, or did it come as a donation from, say, the booster? And if it came as a donation, then that's a totally different situation. But, as far as governance and compliance goes, that's a policy that needs to be written, and it needs to be clear. I think where people get into trouble is that they don't have policy in place, and they just do it because it seems like a good idea in the moment. And that's
Sure.
when some cranky old auditor comes down and says, "Oh, no, we can't do that. So we're going to go look back at the last 10 years of things you've done, and we're going to ding you for every single one of them."
Right.
And they do that.
And there certainly, for anyone that's observing this, like, certainly do not give out cash, booster or teacher, until I don't advise that until my customers checked in with their school bookkeeper, because where I taught, you couldn't give a child cash. And so there's so many variations. So just check with your local campus to make sure you're not going to get a conversation you weren't expecting because you thought you heard about rock, paper, scissors on a podcast. Just check. Mike, this is an asking card I've come up with just to help think of who to ask. This reminds me of, like, at youth group or church camp when they have like an icebreaker game, and you're going around the room trying to find these types of people. So this would be one way to help a child think of who to ask in their world. I have another one that's a little same kind of thing, but I added these little boxes to it. And this would help a child or a family. I've asked grandma, because they could kind of check off, like, how many times do they need to ask? Man, in a 4-week campaign, if they've asked grandma once and grandma didn't give, maybe it was a voicemail or maybe it was a text message. This would be a good way to track text messages, because just because grandma didn't give after the first text doesn't mean that she's not wanting to support the fundraiser. I really think that it needs to be okay to follow up. Especially if it's a texting campaign, you got to follow up, because I know I have texts that get buried. And so I think, helping to create a way for someone that's texting to follow up with those donors, because I think that's where we leave a lot of fundraising dollars on the table, is we ask one time by text, and we don't ever nudge or bump that text, and that donor just got distracted with washing dishes or changing a diaper or who knows what, and they want to give, but they just need to be reminded about the opportunity to give. So a pleasant persistence and follow-up. And if someone's offended by that, then I'm going to just let them have to wrestle with that. But that is going to help with fundraising.
Yeah, follow-up is key. I mean, that's just old sales psychology that actually is very truthful. A person says no to you on the first ask, I know we have a strong culture and a strong stance behind no means no. But when you're asking someone to support a group, or support a cause or support anything, or even buy something from you, no doesn't mean no forever. Oftentimes no means not right now.
Sure.
So follow up.
Sure.
Follow up is key. And don't pester them, but polite persistence. I like the way you put that. Polite persistence. This is your family. As someone in sales, you understand the difference between cold market and warm market. And there is no warmer market than your family. Especially when your family's been prepped by your parents that you're calling them ahead of time. So, you can't just ask once. Sometimes you do have to ask twice, depending on the length of the campaign. And especially in a 4-week campaign, absolutely ask them again. And it's like, hey, I'm going to yeah, go ahead.
I want to show you another on this is a tip or trick that could help a group if they've never this is like a double your fundraising kind of trick or tip. Put the group into teams. Mike, you'd have to clarify for me if the tubas are fundraising for a goal and the trombones are fundraising for a goal and the trumpets, but it's still we, right? It's still we. Now that we still have the big goal up here, but then we break that goal down by woodwinds, brass, percussion, and guard, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what these goals would be about. And what you would do here is you would have, this might be the woodwind team. And maybe they have a team goal of $5,000. And the team reward is going to be that they get to pick that Longhorn Steakhouse for the team reward, or the pizza party, or pedicures and manicures, or whatever it's going to be for the reward. But what we have here would be, I would be tracking how many people they've asked. How many people have you asked? You could also use this. Yeah. How many text messages have you sent? How much have you asked? If you could also have these be tubs of cookie dough or bags of popcorn if you wanted to. You could do that if you needed to. And then this is like a thermometer that they would shade in as they go. Those are some things you could do that could really change the fundraising. And if they did that paired, I would say paired with their supporters list. If they paired this with their supporters list, I think that they would find a lot of success pairing how much did you raise, or your supporters list with the team goal chart. Just want to share that, Mike.
Right. I like that. I like that idea because, that really plugs into teamwork, and that's what we're doing here. And, you have one big meta goal, and then you have other sub goals that people plug into. And, again, it's far. I know we keep touching on compliance because it's a big concern right now. But what's the mechanism for that reward? How is it coming? And when you're looking at a situation like this, like what you just showed me, where you're incentivizing, you're rewarding the kids for making contacts, for doing the ask, you're not technically moving funds at this point. You're just in the activity of asking, and you're rewarding them for that. So I don't see that as being tied to the fundraising, and I see no enforcement potential there from the IRS on something like that.
Right.
But again,
right.
How is it being approached? How is it structured? What's the policy behind it? Why are we doing it? And how are we funding the reward? Those are the questions that'll get asked. But,
sure.
Looking at that right now, I see no issue with that. And I think that's a brilliant idea to have the sections going, working together, because everything we do here is about working together.
That's it.
But we're approaching an hour.
Yeah. We're right on like 30 seconds from an hour.
So anything else you want to add to this? And what we'll do is, I'll let you give your final remarks, and then I will close it out, and then you and I will stay on afterwards after I end the live stream.
When I present, Mike, I have this great opportunity a couple times a year to do like a fundraising 101 for music ed majors at different colleges, and I have a little presentation that I give to music ed majors about some basics. One of the things that I share with those music ed majors is, don't forget, before you start the fundraiser, go ask the principal or the SAC committee. In Florida, we have SAC, which is a campus committee. Tell them about the problem that you're about to start a fundraiser for. Because sometimes the principal might say, you know what, especially with a young director, they would rather, in some cases, just if they have the money, the principal might pay for the thing that we need to keep that fundraiser, to keep that band director from fundraising, because fundraising takes time. And my point is, ask the principal first, because they might have some extra money. And maybe even present your fundraising goals, if you have the opportunity, to the principal. Because I had multiple tubas that were purchased by my principal because I told her I was about to start a fundraiser for tubas. And she said, Charlie, you just had the twins. The twins are 3 months old. I will buy you the tuba so that you don't do this fundraiser. And I wouldn't have gotten that tuba if I hadn't asked, or my principal would split a tuba with me often. And so I want to mention, make sure you ask. It's okay to ask, especially if there's any directors listening to the call. Whether you work, I love that, Stuart. The texting calling needs to be done as a band. Yes. It's called a 59-minute fundraiser or a 29-minute fundraiser. Get them in a room, get them asking together, get them texting together, have it be hype. Yes, Stuart, you nailed that. And then it doesn't matter to me if it's a popcorn or a cookie dough or a pancake breakfast or the thing. It also doesn't matter, scarily, platforms, whether it's Simple Raise, Vertical Raise, Snap Raise, Insta Raise, Charlie Raise, Mike Raise. There's so many Raise platforms right now. Find a platform that just makes sense. If you need support, find a platform that has a rep. That's up to you. What they charge, I find, is really still not the point. It's really participation percentage. And also what Mike and I have been talking about today is process. And I try to emphasize with Echo, process a week to 2 weeks before you launch that campaign. That's when you're going to find success. So, and know why you're raising money.
Yes. Well, Charlie, I want to thank you for joining me today. And, just talking to these parents, I don't know how many came through here. There have been people the whole time plugging in, but this will have legs. It usually does. This live will be available on Facebook for, I believe, 30 days before they delete it, but it will live forever on the YouTube.
Okay.
So feel free to send people to it, whatever. I will put this out there, but parents, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting your programs. Thank you for supporting your kids. That's why we do this. That's the important part, not, how well we do as a board member, how well we do as a consultant, how well we do as a fundraiser, how well we do as whatever it is we're doing around our kids. The important part is our kids' development. I said the other day, and actually you guys hear me say this a lot. It's not about the music. It's more than the music. Because what we're doing here is developing our children into responsible, productive adults. And a lot of what I learned in my music education is a lot of what drives me still today. Now, I know that people are going to say, well, that's not fair that you can say that, Mike, because clearly you're still in education. I'm not. I am an event producer. I work with production teams and I produce conferences all over the country. This is what I do because music compelled me to do it, because the activity has held me here the whole time, because of what it has done for me and what I know it can do for you guys and for your kids, and not just the kids in the programs, but the parents attached to those kids. This changes you too. So we're very glad that you're here. If you need any help, I'm going to put your name out there, Charlie. If you guys need any help with fundraising in the future, I encourage you to contact Charlie, because you all know that I don't endorse anybody. But after talking to Charlie, I'm going to tell you, talk to Charlie. And if he can't help you, I promise you, he's going to be able to steer you in a direction that you need to go in. Either that be with process or that be with a local vendor in your area. Who knows?
Sure.
But yeah, well, Charlie, thank you for being here with me. I'm going to sign off, everybody. You can just hang out here for a second and we can wrap up. So thank you, everybody. This has been Mike with SoundstageEDU. This has been Charlie with FloridaFundraiser.com. So y'all have a great rest of your day.